The day the vault doors open in 208. And will it happen again? Bringing you 1,000 secrets from the real estate trailblazers. You get to learn from the very best marketers. And let's have some fun. Today we're going to discuss three things. Number one is how during 208 crash, Canada went overnight from very tight lending to setting the record for the fastest economic recovery in Western world history. Okay? Number two, how similar today's financial conditions are to that of the 208 crash. And number three, can we apply the same solutions today to ease lending restrictions and restart the markets? Quick caveat here. Before we start, I'm not an economist or financial professor. I'm just a guy that does a crazy amount of research and tries to connect all the dots. I've been forecasting the housing market in the Lower Mainland for over 40 years. I've been wrong 2 quarters, and that's a 99.4% accuracy. I actually live here. 12,000 buyers and 1,011 sales later. I walk the streets, I touch the dirt, I listen to the buyers, the sellers, and the realtors. I feel their fears and I see the greed. So I've also studied CMHC forecasts, and from that glass tower in Ottawa, over a 10-year period, they appear to have been wrong 63% of the time. I say if the government's going to build something, expect it to take 3 times longer, and when finished, you just try and find the front door. Good luck. And budget-wise, just look at the Kinder Morgan pipeline go from a $7.4 billion budget to a $40 billion budget. Now, if you're an economic or financial expert and have better data or information that challenges these views today, I welcome it. Please correct me. I'm planning to have some expert guests on in the next session. Now, here are the facts as I've seen and studied. In mid-January 2009, mortgage lending was frozen solid. I say they wrapped the bank vaults with titanium heavy-duty chains like as thick as this, and you could not cut them with a cutting torch. Then within a few weeks, the 5-year mortgage rates fell 44%, and the Bank of Canada slashed its overnight lending rates at record speeds. In October, it was 3.75 of 208, and then in January of 2009, they dropped to 1%. In April, down to a quarter. That is a 3.5% drop in just 6 months. That's one of the fastest and deepest rate cuts in Canadian history. The lending reopened overnight and the housing market took off. We had the fastest economic recovery in the entire Western world. Now that's with Jim Flattery as the finance minister and Mark Carney as the governor of the Bank of Canada. So, what happened? Can we do it again? Did the government secretly bail out the banks in 2008? Did they sell billions in bonds behind closed doors? Today I'm going to explain exactly what happened the way I see it and why that playbook may not work today. So listen, in late 2008, Canadian home prices were already down 10 to 15%. Pastrick, the chief economist for Central One Credit Union, forecast a further 25% drop. And he was with CMHC for a lot of years too. Credit froze almost overnight. In the U.S., the Lehman Brothers collapsed. Washington Mutual failed, the largest savings and loan bank in the United States, with over $300 billion in assets. Ouch. Merrill Lynch was taken over. AIG needed a massive government bailout. Hundreds of smaller U.S. banks failed. Now, as Canadians, we're watching this unfold in real time and worrying about the strength of our own banks. Then in Canada, it was like we flipped our tight credit rules overnight. From mid-January of 2009, within weeks, the 5-year discounted mortgage rates dropped 44%. Credit started flowing again. Mortgage approvals were happening. It felt like my dog could get a mortgage. So what happened behind the closed doors, and can we do the same thing again? First of all, let me show you what the market actually did in 2008. So here, the average home price starting on January of 2008 is tracked here to May of 2010. So look, we're starting off with our sales. We have 159 sales in April of 2008, and then it starts to drop. In July, we're down to 139, and by January, we're down to 54%. That's a 72% drop in sales from that May until January. Ouch. And then the sales jumped up 257% from that January right up until July of 2009. So in 6 months, 7 months, it jumped up 257%. Now, at the same time, the actual prices dropped 9%. In some cities, it was as much as 15%. But in Abbotsford, the average home price dropped 9%. And that's from May to January. And then from January to May of 2010, it ended up going up 10%. That was a very good recovery. That's the best recovery anywhere in the Western world. Michael Flatterly was considered a saint, a genius. How did he do it? Now, I have also broken this into high-end home sales and low-end, and the high-end was most interesting. Here, on the top half of the sales, we had 76 sales in April of 2008. And then by the time we got down to January, it was 17, and even in March, it was 15. Holy crackers. That is a 90% drop in sales from that period. Boy, oh boy, that is scary. Now, after that, the prices increased 9%. So, they went from their 94% up to 103%. And that all happened in 18 months. So that's what actually happened in good old the middle of the Fraser Valley. Good one to pick. Now, back when things were recovering, we're all trying to figure out what happened. It was like so secret we could not find out what was going on. I knew a lot of the members of parliament at the time, and I'm asking them, I'm hearing something like a $56 billion fund was given to the banks to protect them, and then we finally find out after all of these years what actually happened. So back then the government launched an insured mortgage purchase program. So in 2008, about 50% of the mortgages were actually insured. The total mortgage debt was about $800 billion. So that means about $400 billion were insured. So starting in October 2008, the government started buying $25 billion worth of insured mortgages from the bank. And then another $75 billion in November. And then finally, on the January 27th, 2009 federal budget, they increased the buyout to $125 billion. So was this a bailout? Functionally, yes. the banks got all this cash. And technically, no. The banks were actually solvent, but just short of cash. So now I'm going to try and explain why I believe this can't be repeated today. In early 2009, the federal debt was about $470 billion. It was 29% of gross domestic product. Now that means everything we make in the entire country in a year. Now, mortgage debt at that time was $800 billion. But remember, 50% of it was insured mortgages. That's about $400 billion. Today, our federal debt is much closer to $1.3 trillion. That's up 270%. That's over 40% of gross domestic product. The government's hands are much more tied today. Now, about 80% of today's mortgages are uninsured. So that means out of the $2.4 trillion in mortgages, not $800 billion, $2.4 trillion, about $590 billion are insured. So what's not insured is one crazy big liability for the banks. So there's no easy switch anymore. In 2008, the government could flip a switch, and they provided $125 billion. The debt was low, the inflation was falling, and most mortgages were insured. Today, that switch is gone. Debt is high. Inflation limits rate cuts. Most mortgages are uninsured, so the banks carry the big risk. And any quick move now risks inflation, market backlash, or financial stress. So the policy moves are slower and smaller. So I believe this means lending continues to stay very tight. Refinancing is harder. The recovery will take longer. Bottom line, in 2008, 2009, the government restored confidence quickly. Today it seems like that playbook is not possible. So I'm reaching out to you. If you're a financial expert or economist that can show us some new solutions to our tough credit, please speak up. And in the next episode, I actually do plan to have some financial experts to discuss what would lessen the bank's liabilities and actually reopen lending today. So thanks for your time. Stay in touch. Click the subscribe button or join the newsletter team and let us have fun. And if you want to do any interviews, holy crackers, I love to hear from you. We're just connecting all the experts we can. Appreciate your time. Bye-bye for now. Bringing you 1,000 secrets from the real estate trailblazers. You get to learn from the very best marketers. And let's have some fun.